What up, it's your boy Tone 202, and yes, that is a green screen. Anyways, this is another why I left Atlanta, and I wanted to reiterate I haven't lived here in 15 years, but this is, just a series now. I told you guys about my experience down there, but you guys seem to like these videos when I talk about Atlanta in good and bad ways. My experience, because my whole experience wasn't bad. Um, I didn't get robbed. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot going on down there now where you had a propensity to experience something, you know, you can run afoul with somebody more now. But even back then, 15 years ago, it was pretty much off the chain. But I am a hermit pretty much, and I stay to myself. I don't party and stuff like that. I travel by myself. I just, So, anyways, but I noticed something that was interesting. And this also goes out to Nicole and her people who are thinking about moving to Atlanta, and the people who actually live down there, who are on my channel. Very nice people, who keep me abreast on what's going on down there, because I plan on going back down there to visit, and eventually I am thinking about living in Kennesaw, which is on the outskirts of Atlanta. Hopefully, working for the CDC or something like that. Anyway, so moving on. I was noticing that I was looking up the minimum wage because I don't know what the minimum wage was when I was down there. Um, I was working, so I never even paid the minimum wage any mind. But when I was down there, if you lost your job, it was all bad. It was nothing to like you didn't have time to relax and like, oh, I'll find another job. No, you had to the next day you had to be on it, or you're gonna sink very very fast, because it is a no holds bar, no joke place to live. It's not a laid back southern. No, it's right now, and that's when I was down there then. It's even more so now. But I noticed that the minimum wage for the city, I've never heard anybody doing this before. Mayor Kasim Reed raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour, uh, for city workers. Now, homelessness is a huge, huge, huge problem. I think there's 58,000 people in Georgia alone that are homeless. They have a very large homeless children population, also that is suffering from homelessness. And then, of course, the HIV uh, uh, problem down there is on a third world level, and it's just getting worse. You have, as far as in the African American community, one out of every um, let's see, 7 out of every 10 women have HIV within Fulton County. So that's just horrible bad. That's just terrible. But a lot of these things are contributing factors. So when I saw this for city workers, uh, I was curious to, okay, these aren't McDonald's, these aren't Burger King, these aren't fast food people, these are for city workers. And when I was reading this, it stated that it started in July 2017. Um, and it also stated that it's only for 2 years. Now, as somebody who used to be in the politics, I used to work for the Ohio House of Representatives. I'm thinking that this mayor did this according to the term that he's in. I think a mayoral term might be, what, 4 years for a mayoral term. So I'm thinking that he might have, went to the governor and said, "Hey, I need some money," and the governor said, "You have this much money, but you can only do this for these amount of people." Raise the minimum wage for city workers. This is not state workers. This is not county workers. And this is not private industry. This is the city workers. For city workers, raise the minimum wage for them, and I'm assuming that, okay, let's say the wage to 13 per hour effectively July 1st, and will increase to 15 an hour for the next 2 fiscal years. So I'm thinking that's probably going to be at the end of his term or something like that, and then they're going to try it again. And I think this is all trial and error. Here's a good thing about this. The good thing about this is that there's a increase in wages, and they found some money in a certain amount of time to give some people more money for the work that they do. That's the good thing. Here's the bad thing about it. This is only for 2 years. This is only for 2 fiscal years. So it's just like a prevailing wage. For those of you who never worked on prevailing wage, I never have, but I had a friend who did. Construction workers work on prevailing wage. Construction workers are city workers. Here's here's my limited understanding of prevailing wage. It's basically when you're actually working on a bridge or working building a building, you make top dollar. But you're not always working on a bridge or a building. So when you're not, you go back down to minimum wage. So what this tells me is if I'm a city worker and I'm making $17 an hour while I'm building bridges, while I'm, working on the roads, which by the way, Atlanta is always under construction because there's so many people coming into Atlanta. There's so much traffic and there's so much commerce and business there. So, they're always making, highways, stretched out further and further and so on and so forth. Always building. And so getting back to what I was saying is so when you have city workers and you have prevailing wage, when they're not building bridges and so on and so forth, basically when not working, they can, to my understanding, they make minimum wage. And I think they can also, they don't file for unemployment because I think that would hurt them if they file for unemployment. One of you guys can correct me on that. But I know that they make $7, $8 an hour, whatever the minimum wage is. That's what it was here some years ago when my buddy was working on bridges and stuff, and I think he still does that. So now basically that number is 13 and now it's $17 an hour for the next 2 fiscal years. Problem is when when you do that, it has a trickle down effect. You're looking at you're looking at one. This is not going to always be. So those people who are making prevailing wage are going to go right back down, to the money, to the minimum wage that they were making before when they're not working. That's one. Two, you got everybody else looking at this and going, why aren't we affected by this? Is positively. So it can have a negative effect. I'm going to read on a little bit more. The city of Atlanta worked for Atlanta Jobs with Justice, a local new non-profit organization. It's setting a new minimum wage, which affected 360 employees immediately and will affect more than 850 employees once the full increase is phased in. So, like I said, it's only for a certain amount of workers. But also, like I said, it has a 2 year positive effect, but it's going to have an even longer lasting negative effect. Unless they can keep continuing to find this money and keep this up and then go on to state workers and then go on to county workers and then go into private. Well, it's going to be hard to get it into private industry because it's private industry. They control that. Not only that, what it's also going to do is it's also going to create a uh, more of a barrier to entry for people trying to become a city worker because they're like, oh, okay, this is where the good jobs are. So you're going to have people who are qualified, you're going to have people who are overqualified. They're going to get denied because there's going to be more barrier to entry. We just can't take all these people. So then you're going to have the whole pick and choose going on. And why didn't I get picked? Why didn't my application go into file 13? So on and so forth. You're going to have a lot of that going on. You're going to have a lot of family members who are in getting their family. I mean, it's just going to be, it's like the state here where I live right now, that's how they do in the state. If they don't like you for some reason, they don't even know you, these people will not hire you. That's the way it was, some 10, 15 years ago. Now things seem to be changing according to the DVOP, uh, which is the veterans guy. It's an acronym for Department of Vocation, uh, Personnel, basically, Department of Veterans Personnel. Basically, they help veterans. So I just wanted to bring that to light and see what you guys thought about this. This is very interesting. And of course, something like this can spread into different cities. I don't know if they're doing this, but I just wanted to continue the conversation of what's going on in Georgia. Not because I hate Georgia. So some of you Georgians, cut it out because I keep saying I want to go back to Georgia and live in Kennesaw. So cut that out. But there is a lot of focus on Georgia. There's a lot of focus on Atlanta, not just because of the music. I mean, big ups to those who are making money in music, but more because of the HIV and the homeless problems. And now you have a lot of children who are facing homelessness and/or are already homeless within the state of Georgia, and a lot of them are focused in certain areas. And of course, Atlanta has a lot to do with that. So that's why Atlanta is getting a lot of focus right now. It's because of the negative things that are so overwhelming. And these are issues that, like when you people start cursing at me and calling me names and, all this stuff, you guys never, you never have a solution. That's the problem. You criticize the way I look, you criticize the way I talk, but none of you come up with a solution like this is what we're doing here. This is what we're working on here. We're going and, doing all this and tell me something that has some literature so we can go and look it up. Like I'm not trying to slam the city that you're from. I'm telling you about my experience because I'm like, is this happening all over the place? Like Atlanta has been a focus long before I was living there, but it's even more of a focus now because of how many people are migrating to Atlanta. So you got to understand that. There's a lot of people who are going to Atlanta and they're staying there, but some of those people they have a misconception of Chocolate City. They think that, I can go down here and get a job. I was looking at this one young lady's post on YouTube. She wanted to go down there and be in the movie. She went down there. She did this whole little movie thing, and she was like, "I'm homeless." So you got, you have a lot of people under the effect that this is a mecca that I can go down there and make it. And then you have people saying, yeah, I went down there, I did this, and I made it. Now you have the internet that's affecting a lot of people's position because they don't necessarily have to go out and look for jobs because they are their own boss because of what the internet provides. YouTube and apps where you can DoorDash and all this other stuff where you can just get your grind on while you're trying to make it into whatever it is you're trying to make it into. And then, of course, you have people who are like, I'm going to go down here and get a degree, and or they have a degree and are going down there and they're facing some kind of resistance. So we all need to talk about our experiences. And you people who are just negative people, you guys need to grow up because you got family members who are probably suffering and they're in some of these positions that we're trying to help people get out of. It's your boy Tone 202. God loves you, so do I.